Yes, welcome along. I'm delighted to say I'm finally back after a small bit of a hiatus, a break, a bit of a time out. Trying to build the channel organically with some informational content as opposed to alcohol drinking content. But you can rejoice in knowing that I have built up a tremendous collection of undrank and unreviewed whiskey, that's not a review, for the channel. In actuality, the whiskey stores are at full strength or capacity, and we need to get the great word of Irish whiskey back out, and indeed newly released Irish whiskey back out into the world. So the content is coming hot and fast. Now would be an excellent time to tell you to make sure you're subscribed and liked and clued in and following and updated. You can see where I'm going with this. Without further delay, let's get into the first whiskey video of 2022. Welcome to Whiskey and Whiskey. I'm the Whiskey Chaser Brian here in Christy's bar, Kilkenny. Hope you're keeping well. Okay, so total transparency here. There isn't one whiskey on today's show. What fun would that be? There's two whiskeys. Actually, one is a whiskey and the other one is a poitin. Stay with me. Both are indeed from one of my favorite distilleries in the country. That is, of course, Killowen, but one in fact is not an Irish whiskey. It has Irish whiskey in it, but can't really be called Irish whiskey because of our whiskey technical file, but also because it has some peated Scottish malt in there. Interesting. Now, I'm not entirely sure if that it's the first time that's happened. I'm far too lazy to check the info online on it, but I do believe I saw somewhere that this had been done before to a Scotch whiskey, just the other kind of way around. Not entirely sure. If you got the deets, lay them below in the comment section for me. Sound. So the malted whiskey is called the Dalriadan. I hope I said that right. That's part 1 of 2, which means more is coming. And the poitin is called the Stone Soup. Let's get into the details, shall we? Now, before we do, I just want to let you, the viewer, know we are changing things up here slightly. I have seen and I realized that you don't particularly like videos that are typically longer than 10 minutes. So my promise to you is now moving forward, we are going to keep these short and sweet, condensing, while trying to combine the most information that I think you will want to see and hear. So I promise I will not talk shite for 20 minutes anymore, and I'll just get down to the kissing. Let's go. So the Dalriadan is 40% double distilled peated malt originating in, I hope I say this right, Killowen Distillery in Islay, aged completely in ex-bourbon hogsheads, and 60% of an 11-year-old malt from County Antrim, finished for 3 years in Oloroso butts. Use your imaginations on which distillery that is. So yes, Scotch and Irish in a celebration of different but heavily related whiskey traditions. Check that out. This is bottled at a chest-thumping 57.5% ABV and incredibly limited to just 386 bottles. In the interest of transparency, the remaining bits of this bottle, yes, remaining bits, was given to me at our Killowen tasting back in December. But as always, all thoughts are my own. I didn't drink all that. That's what's left over from the tasting. Promise. Now, the poitin, which I'm a huge fan of, which I did a whiskey video clarifying the differences and origins of poitin versus moonshine. I will leave a link here above so you can check that out. This is so eloquently called Stone Soup. Killowen are calling 2022 the year of poitin, and they are huge purveyors of the spirit and really pushing hard to have it make a massive comeback. They have released a number of their own poitins already, so they are incredibly delicious. I'm expecting this to be absolutely no different. This poitin uses a traditional mash bill of turf smoked grain, which was then wood rested in PX sherry casks for 10 weeks. It's bottled at 55% ABV and limited to 252 bottles. That's sold out like that. They're now like hen's teeth. This is pretty much a collector's item. And I haven't seen a lot of them opened, but this is my bottle. And guess what? It's opened for business. So this poitin took 14 bags of grains, which are as follows. Let me see if I remember this. 7 bags of turf malted barley, 3 bags of unmalted barley, 2 bags of turf malted oats, 1 bag of malted wheat, and finally, 1 bag of malted rye. Jesus, lads, could you have made that any more complicated to try and remember? What I like about this poitin is that its distillers are moving towards reformation of the current poitin regulations by highlighting the real traditions of Irish poitin making. Yes, Ireland has a poitin technical file. Check my video that I told you about, poitin versus moonshine. Leave a link down below. Yes, poitin can only be made in Ireland and has a GI status. The link below sums up everything you need to know. To comply with legislation, this bottle of poitin must be stored for a period not exceeding 10 weeks, and the labeling may not refer to casks, maturation, or aging, presentation, marketing, or packaging material. This legislation, according to Killowen, is in drastic need of reform. It is, after all, our first real native spirit. Now, before we get into the tasting, please do not forget to like and subscribe. It keeps the channel moving along slightly quicker than a snail's pace. Your interaction is appreciated. Right, so first we're going to get a little bit of the Dalriadan into a glass. We're going to get this going. Like I said already previously, 40% double distilled peated malt, 60% 11-year-old malt from County Antrim, 57.5 ABV, 11 years of age. This bottle is bottle 290 of 386, checking in and quite possibly checking out very soon. Don't even have to get this up to the nose. I can actually get the smokiness already. It fills the kind of area that I'm in, and it's filling the space. It's quite fruity, quite smoky. Smoky, not incredibly peated. So for those that are, would say, a little bit hesitant of peated whiskies, this is more on the smoky sweet side. What's coming through is the PX, right? So that sweetness is really kind of dancing on the nose. There's a little bit of that cask strength coming through as well. So you're going to have a little bit of that alcohol content kind of making itself very aware. It's not incredibly overpowering, but it's there. You should know that. The more you kind of agitate it, I think, you leave it sit, you're getting that smokiness coming through. You're getting that kind of almost a medicinal, it's nearly a medicinal side of it. Then when you agitate it, the smoke or the sweet flavors, the fruity flavors are coming through. You're kind of like, you're obviously getting PX, but you're getting more kind of a boiled sweets kind of fruitiness, if that makes sense to you. There's a nice bit of complexity here. So smoky, sweet, fruity, sweet, smoky. Let's have a little slurp, slange it. Interesting. It's more smoky than fruity at the start. The sweetness kind of comes through then. Like I said before, your boiled sweets, fruits. It's a touch medicinal and iodine-y kind of. That smokiness is transpiring from the nose to the palate a little bit more. Another sup, slange it. Even a hint of apricot there. Again, sweetie, fruits on the finish. Smoky grains are forwards, leaving that flavor in your mouth. Even actually, do you know what it's leaving? Kind of a hint of popcorn, that leftover taste from popcorn, not the actual popcorn taste, the taste that's left over in your mouth from popcorn. Plenty of smoky loveliness, plenty of malt, a slight earthiness, along with that iodine-y kind of medicinal kind of flavor that's still there. But it is nicely balanced between the nose, the palate, and the finish. There's no bitterness, there's a smoky sweetness, popcorny kind of finish. So now we are going to move on to the Stone Soup Irish Poitin. Yes, rested in PX sherry casks for 10 weeks. Whoa. Hello, Tuesday. As I said, PX sherry casks is rested in, you can't, well, you're not meant to say casks, but 14 bags of different grains used, 55% ABV, bottle number 34 of 252 checking in. Depending on how good this is, might leave it behind the bar if people want to try it. This is pretty much a collector's item now at this stage. Unfortunately, you will see that sitting on people's shelves and not opened and being enjoyed like it should be, like we have here. This is how it's done. All right, so on the nose. This reminds me of the rum and raisin single malt that Killowen did, except with kind of added kind of spice. You have a dried fruits nose, candied figs kind of thing going on. Nearly, do you know what the nose reminds me of? It's fig rolls, right? It's the fig, obviously, but the sweet biscuit around it that's kind of adding a lovely sweetness to it, right? So it's almost the nose of a fig roll turned up to 11, combined with that sweetness that you get from the outside biscuit part. There's a real spry type of freshness behind it. The two actually work really well together. I want to say it almost is reminiscent of a refined clove nose. Like, it's not as in your face, but it has that freshness from a clove, if that makes any sense whatsoever. Definitely reminds me of the 5-year-old single malt that Killowen did, the rum and raisin. I don't know why. Maybe to you it might not. Lovely. Okay, let's get it on the palate. Sláinte it. Lovely, smoky, bit of grain there. Sweet raisins, very earthy. And you know what? For a poitin, not as thin as you would come to expect from a poitin. Certainly oilier than you would imagine. Now, that PX cask, even though we can't say that, is doing a wonderful job of adding sweetness and complexity into the spirit. It'd be rude not to. Sláinte it. 55% ABV, yes indeed. On the finish, there's a touch of bitterness. There's a touch of raisin. Some nice alcohol, almost, I would say borderline menthol-y notes. There's almost like a white wine type of acidity there, if I wanted to get totally anal, I suppose you could say. But also very, very earthy. So I like that. I have to say, I do like that. I'm starting to appreciate poitin a little bit more in my, maybe call it old age. I don't know, but yeah, so there you have it. So to sum up, where do we kind of stand with these two? The stone soup was about, I think, 85 euros, and I think the Dalriadan retailed for 135. Now, I did get this bottle FOC, which, you know, for an 11-year-old vatting of blended malt, it's a little on the high side, but you know what? This is Ireland. There is nothing cheap anymore, and we probably don't know the half of what things cost behind the scenes. And I'm not trying to make any caveats or, you know, back anyone up, because Killowen are one of my favorite distilleries, and they are. But genuinely, these lads making whiskey, drinking whiskey, and have always had solid prices. So I genuinely think for them to make any margin on this whatsoever, they more than likely charge a price that reflects all the background work. That's just my opinion. Now, in terms of Flavor Town, these are both serious contenders in their own categories for flavorsome spirits. The 11-year-old single malt is beautifully sweet and smoky while not being too in your face. That's important to understand. I would imagine if I was a peated whiskey drinker, this would be quite pleasant, quite a pleasant sweet sipper, and I think you'd be happy with it. I like sweet peated whiskeys, and I go as far to say I think that if someone was a little hesitant or had a bad experience with peated whiskey, this here would be a winner to try and get back on that horse with, in my honest opinion. Now, when it comes to the poitin, and if I'm totally honest, it's only recently that I'm getting into drinking poitin on a regular basis and really starting to try and understand more about it, and most importantly, appreciate it more. I think this is really good. You would not think for 1 second that this is only 10 weeks old. You wouldn't. It is different, sure, it's going to be. Its mash bill is completely insane. But what Killowen are doing with Poitin and of course their own spirits, it's as obvious as the day is long. It's passion-fueled deliciousness. Fanboy here, yeah. And while I appreciate that this may not be particularly for everyone, it certainly does warrant opening, enjoying, and sharing with friends. So there you have it. I hope I keep that in under 10 minutes. They are my honest, unbiased reviews that aren't reviews. If you've tried any of these yourself, please let me know in the comment section below what you thought of them. Did they meet your expectations? Did they not? Did you think something could have been better or worse? Drop me a line down below. Now, shout out to the lads here in Christy's bar for the hospitality, and I have to go now. It's nearly opening time. Keep a close eye on my socials for the next whiskey tasting coming in a couple of weeks, right? I'm letting you know first. It's going to be a big one. In the meantime, stay safe and we shall chat soon. Chaser out. Sláinte.